Pam Lausterer. This is Corky Forbes. She's what we call the Arrive Officer for Saunders County that deals with absenteeism. I'm going to kind of break this out. I'm going to talk about the historical aspect because I've been around a little bit longer in that area. And then I'll turn it over to Corky to talk a little bit about specifically how we've been trying to kind of work with the system that we have. I'm very appreciative of, I lost his name, of UNO Justice Institute. Hank, Dr. Hank, about 5 years ago, he was absolutely wonderful. When we were looking at the idea of absenteeism, he came and supported us. And one of the very first things we did, we looked at, we have a number of schools in Saunders County. How are we going to do that? Schools are not going to come together and hash out what's going wrong in their school. So the idea then is that we focused on the biggest school in Saunders County, that being Wahoo. We spent many meetings with the administrative staff and the staff, at the elementary, middle, and high school, and really discussed their process. How are you dealing with truancy? All the way from the person that is picking up the phone, taking the call about, my son or daughter is going to be gone, how it's documented, what kind of teachers are actually documenting that, when the student is gone. So they looked at that whole process, and it took about a year for them to really kind of look at what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong. So after we did that, then we brought in kind of the legal system to have that, exchange of information. What do they need in order to proceed on, filing? So at that point then, once we did that, and I'm so appreciative of that process because the idea of that communication, it is huge, and it's kind of helped us through this transitional time. And so then after that, then what we did is we had a big meeting with all the schools. Wahoo Public sat down in front of everybody and basically said, this is what we were doing wrong, this is what we needed to do to correct. And that really opened up the doors for the rest of them to kind of open up and start asking questions and being okay with, our school isn't necessarily running, perfect when we talk about attendance issues. So really, the dialogue was wonderful. And then we brought out Building Bright Futures. They come out and shared with not only just the schools, we had probation, diversion, we had the courts, all sitting in kind of this round table idea, sharing information. And that's been, I believe, and I will beat down the doors because I believe that until we are a wraparound service for these kids, we cannot work effectively. And so we've been doing that. And Mrs. Forbes has been wonderful because she's my advocate. She's been over 30 years experience as a school counselor. So that really brought forth a lot because she understood kind of maybe where schools were coming from and how to overcome some of those obstacles, as far as allowing us in. So that's been a truly big asset. But during this process, again, you have people really, I think we're at a point where people are willing to share. When we're talking about a kid, it's like, how can we, and I have to really be appreciative to you because you've also shared with our county, because the idea, one of the things was, how do we expedite these cases? So we really went to a tier system or moving towards that. Because our hope is that no one goes through the court unless it's a filing on a parent. You know what I mean? We're hoping that that's going to be the final outcome. And that way we can move that case from one level to another. And I'll kind of let Corky do that while I kind of pass around the information.
This has always been a real passion of mine because if kids don't go to school, they're lost. So what we've tried to do is set up a program working with the schools and the county attorney. And luckily, when I came in, all of that free stuff was done. So now what we look at, and this is the first year where I've actually had kids that violated the program, the number of days. And I think that's really important that you do use the 5-10 days. If you do not use that, people don't see it as a problem. And lots of people very angry with me because their child was a good kid, got good grades, and he was sick. Just because I went on vacation those 4 days that really shouldn't matter, do you think? I'm going, you know what? The law says 10 days. So we're going to deal with this. Now, am I going to turn you over to the county attorney? I am from the county attorney's office. So technically you've already been turned over. But no, we're not going to do that. We're going to look at what's going on with you, why you've missed, and what we can do to improve that situation. Now, by just working with them, I think it's made a real difference because they know, number one, someone's checking on them. The schools know that they must report. The big thing was, anybody come out of a school setting? We have a real problem with power. Of course, our counselors, it's administrators. But we don't like anybody telling us what we can do and what we can't do. Well, the law kind of tried to do that. It's like, oh my goodness. So yes, you do. You must report. But what I guaranteed my administrators is we will not send them to court without your permission and dealing with you. That was probably one of the biggest hurdles we had to overcome. Now, I really don't care whether it's your child or Pam's child. If they miss a number of days, I am going to deal with them. And they understand that. But we do look at why they were gone. It's just plain common sense, people. If we don't use common sense, we get all tied up in all this stuff. But we look at that. No, we don't look at that once they go over the 10 days, then we start to look at it to decide what needs to be done. When I work with the schools, we look at the 3 things that the schools must do. The schools must notify 3 times. So they set up 5, 7, 9, whatever they choose. They must send letters or do verbal contact and document it. That is part of the law. They must do educational counseling. So I said, okay, what are we going to consider educational counseling? And what I took a look at when we did that is does this child have an IEP? If they have an IEP, then we need to look at that and see what it says. Now, if this child is on an IEP because of behavioral issues, then we're going to have to look at that a little bit differently than the child that's on an IEP because he may be learning disabled or my little Down syndrome girl. So we have to look at those, see what that IEP says, and are they being followed? Contrary to public opinion, it is easy to write an IEP. It's not necessarily so easy to follow them all the time. So that is one thing that coming out of probation side, you need to check on. You need to find out what the kid's educational plan is. Then we also look at, do they have a 4-year plan if they're high school kids? We tried to get that through the legislature, on Rule 10, and they would go for it. But we think it's really important anyway if you are amongst the counseling profession. That's one of the things that we see as most important, is that the kid has a 4-year plan, either 7th grade through 12th grade, or at least 9 through 12. Those should be on file. Every student should have one. So when I look at the junior in high school, I can say, all right, this kid is on track for graduation. No, they're not. That's the school's responsibility to have that, and feel free to ask for it because it should be available. Nice thing about Nebraska Career Connections is they can put it on the computer, which they can access from anywhere as long as they have the internet. Then we also look at what kind of guidance counseling that they may have worked with their counselors. And that's going to be determined by the school. Some counselors are very into this type of thing, others aren't. I have one counselor that has 6 through 12. I don't know how he does, but does, if he gets anything done. The other thing we need to look about is educational evaluation. If this child is struggling in school, have they been evaluated by a psychologist? If it's a behavioral problem, have they been diagnosed with ADD? These things are going to make a difference in the child's attendance. So those are things that you have the right to ask about, and that they can find it out for you. A lot of the kids are not going to have IEPs because they're just normal, regular kids that like to sleep in the morning. I do a lot of asking them to tell me why they were gone. My mother yesterday was just fuming mad because our new thing, and I think you have a copy of that, it's on the Ride Health Plan. This is to deal with the kids that are claiming that they're gone because they're sick. So I said, okay, great, that's wonderful. Now here's what we're going to do this year. You're going to, parents, you're going to fill this out. You're going to explain to me why your child is gone because they're sick. If they have a chronic disease, or if they have asthma, whatever, you tell me. You write that down. You tell me what medication they're taking, and you tell me, oh, this is so rude, you tell me what professional has diagnosed this. You'd be surprised the number of diagnoses that are made by unqualified people like mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. Somebody else said, your kid's ADD? All right. So if the mom says to me, my kid's ADD, right? I want to know who diagnosed that. And then they sign at the bottom that if it becomes an issue, I can call that doctor and check. Am I going to do that? At age school? Probably not, unless we get into the court situation. So, what we try to do is say, all right, let's do some intervention levels. First, they work with me. If they continue to miss school, I go to their house, I do whatever I need to do. If they're still not coming to school, then I refer them to Pam. Pam puts them on diversion. There's a diversion contract. They do community service. We watch them very close. We watch the grades.
And assessments are done.
Yes.
At that level, YLS. I do if it's the ADC, the MACI if it's substance abuse. We do also the 40 Development Asset Survey too. So as you move up, you're doing more comprehensive assessments. Where Corky's level is that school refusal assessment. I believe that came out of Millard. So that's kind of the first level, and then we just keep moving up. So.
Yes, and I think that's very important, that every step up is just a little bit more.
She actually, they have given her access to Power School. So that's when she says, she's kind of the hub, if you will. So that if it goes through the court process, let's say, then she knows the worker, and then she can, basically contact them. Because there was that kind of, because the workers were changing, no one knew who their kid was and how often. So she's kind of the hub to contact them, whether it be the probation officer or, or the KDC worker or whomever, and just, hey, you just need to be aware of this. So it was an awareness. And that's why, again, we are trying to do a team approach here.